It's a beautiful day to you, my lovely and smart real estate investors. Hope you all are doing well today, and I'm super delighted to welcome you to another insightful and educative session of Property Matters here on YouTube. In case you're coming across a video like this for the first time, Property Matter is a real estate YouTube talk show where we expose you to everything you need to know about real estate investment and, of course, real estate development here in the beautiful city of Lagos, Nigeria. Over time, we've talked extensively on how you can identify a fraudulent real estate developer. We've also given insightful tips on how you can identify a fraudulent real estate transaction. Property Matter gives you an insightful information on everything you need to know about real estate. So in case you're coming across a video like this for the first time, do well to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and give the video a like so that we can reach more people so that they won't be making costly real estate investment decisions. See you after this short commercial. Don't go nowhere. All right, you're welcome back. Hope you all are doing well today. So on today's episode, I'm going to be talking extensively on how you can identify areas that are prone to flooding. So on today's episode, I'm going to give an exciting episode on some important things you should pay adequate attention to when you are choosing a property. Now, recently we found out that there has been a climate change, and areas normally that are not usually prone to flooding were also flooded. In fact, I presently witnessed one, and of course I was very shocked. And looking at some of these circumstances, I found out that there are some things that might have caused that flooding, and of course this may be due to people's deliberate negligence. So let's talk about what are the signs that will show you that a place will be flooded. But before we go into that, let's talk generally on what could be the causes of flooding, and why is it that Lagos State is very prone to, some place in Lagos, don't let me generalize, is prone to flooding. Now, the very first cause of flooding basically is what we call the global climate change. Yes, we know the change in the weather pattern has necessitated a lot of unfavorable weather, and then there's been high degree and intensity of rain these days. Then another factor that causes flooding is also called the poor urban planning, and of course this is very prominent and common in some places in Lagos, more importantly the Lekki axis. Of course, we also know that urbanization is also a reason why flooding is very rampant, because of the fact that people are deliberately encroaching on places that they shouldn't have. Of course, we also know that flooding also happens as a result of the blockade of some of the drainage canals and facilities. And obviously, before this flooding happened, there was a statistic that was given to Lagos State and other states in Nigeria by the federal government, and of course these guys told them that there are some places that are high risk for flooding, and most of these signs and warnings were ignored by this. So failure to heed early signs of warning of flooding also resulted that, and we cannot just stress this enough, direct refusal to follow the normal local building regulations. Of course, people have built on canals, people have built on waterways, people have encroached in places where water is supposed to flow, and of course that obviously is also another major causes of flooding. Now, dumping of refuse in dams and drainage canals are also reasons why this water does not have free flow. But as a real estate investor, the first and important instance basically is that you should not generalize. There are areas that are prone to flooding. There are areas that if they don't take adequate measures and safety precautions, they will be flooded. Now, what are those things we need to do? Now, basically, I need to stress this fact that flooding is a natural disaster, and of course it's a global thing. There are areas in some parts of Dubai that also got flooded. I also saw documentaries in some parts of Europe and America that were also flooded. However, the reason why those flooding is not a rampant thing over there is because these countries have sophisticated technological facilities that can help them control the water, and of course give them future alert if such activities will happen. Now, we all know that some part of Africa is still developing. So what are those signs, obvious signs, that an environment or place or a location is prone to flooding? Why should you pay attention to some of these five signs that I'm going to outline? And what should you do if you have invested in those places, or if you are willing and ready to invest in those places? Now, the first thing that shows that a place will be open to incessant flooding, a place will be open to constant flooding, the first factor is that an area that is sharing close proximity to any of these water bodies I'll be outlining. The first one is if the area is near a river, if it's close to a beach, if it's close to a lake or a coastal line. So in places where the structures or the landed property is sharing close proximity to this is a clear indicator that once it rains consistently, such areas are prone to flooding. Now, when I talk about these places, a lot of people have made their own conclusions that Lekki, some parts of Lagos. Well, I've seen areas that are waterfront, that are beachfront, that are lagoon front, that are not flooded. Now, this is a case of the developer understanding the necessity of doing a well-structured drainage system. So these are one of the things that you should put into area. So if you are buying a property that is close to any of these water bodies I have listed, then you need to ask for that question. Now, the second place reason that should show that a place is open to flooding is a place where we have incessant rainfall and there is no clear-cut drainage facilities. Now, there was a flood that happened in the weatherLekki axis a few weeks ago, and this flood was the greatest and the biggest they have seen so far. Now, there are some places in the weatherLekki axis where there are no drainage facilities. I can assure you, I was also surprised because this was not a flood they told me. I witnessed it and I was shocked. This was the biggest shock of my life because I found out that in weatherLekki, of all places that many people have called to be a dry place, was heavily flooded. Now, upon doing our investigation, we found out that a whole lot of people built, in fact, there was a structure that was obstructing the flow of water. It was a gigantic building, and of course, these people are trying to put a lot of things. So, areas where there are no clear drainage facilities is a clear indicator. Okay, so when you have limited drainage infrastructure because of what? Urbanization, that place will be flooded. And you should also understand very well that constructing drainage facilities right now is not just the duty and the responsibility of government. The developer that is selling the house for you should also what we call a drainage system plan that will not affect you who you are buying the house from. And also the government also have their role to play. So when it comes to the issue of drainages, the private and the public sector also have their own contributions to make, just to ensure that people don't get flooded. Then the next thing basically is that the topography of the area too is also a thing you should put into consideration. Now, there are some places that are waterlogged, and if there is no adequate sand filling of that area and there is no adequate drainage plan, a drainage system to channel water, waterlogged areas will flood. That one is very, very important, and that is the case of the Lekki. Now, when I was at Lekki a few weeks ago, found out that as the rain, it was not even an heavy rain, the entire street was flooded. Now, the issue of Lekki basically, of some places in Lekki basically, is that as expensive as houses are in Lekki, it was quite unfortunate that some real estate developers that sold houses in hundreds of millions in Lekki found it extremely difficult to even construct a drainage. What they call a drainage should not be addressed or should not be, taken to be a drainage, because it's more or less like a mini gutter where water is not flowing. Now, in some places there was a drainage, but the water was not channeled to either a river or a canal. So there is poor planning. And one of the things you should also put into consideration basically is that there are places that are very close to dams. Now, when I talk about the dams, where I've given instance of the Isheri North Dam, okay? And one of the things you should know basically about the Isheri North Dam is that that dam is always open. Okay, once that dam is overflowed with water, they open that dam and you find out that there is water everywhere. So there are some places that are very close to such dams like that, and for the water to flow, they need to open the dam. And that's why sometimes larger part of Isheri North is always flooded whenever that dam is open. So you need to pay attention to places that are very close to dam, and please do as well as possible to do what? To avoid such places. I'm not saying all Isheri, but there are some parts, the Ogun State part of Isheri, whenever the dam is open, there is constant drainage, and these are some of the factors that we're talking about. Now, as a real estate developer, how can you avoid flooding? As a real estate investor, how can you avoid flooding? The first thing you need to do when you want to control drainage, flooding, basically, is that don't ignore the warning sign. Now, due to climate changes, like I said initially, there are some places that are not open to flooding and they were flooded. I gave instance of the Lekki, and there are other places that I might have missed. Of course, you are free to share your own comments in the comment section. Yes, do not ignore for the early signs. Then the second thing basically is that avoid places where there are no good drainage systems. There are some places whereby some real estate developers are struggling to provide adequate drainage facilities. In fact, I would say do not buy from a real estate developer that does not have what we call a good drainage system in place. So how can you avoid flooding as you go about your real estate investing, more importantly in the beautiful city of Lagos, Nigeria? Number one, do not avoid the early signs and warnings from any of the government parastatals. Now, the places that were flooded, some alerts were made as far back in April, but a lot of people ignored. That's number one. Number two, do not buy property from a real estate developer that does not have what we call a good drainage layout. Now, the drainage layout talks about the civil work of that estate. Now, in the drainage layout, the developer will clearly identify the kind of drainage is put in there. The developer will also identify how the drainages will be channeled, and the developer also in that drainage layout will also identify how and where they are channeling the water to. Now, the drainage layout saves you this problem. So whether it is a house or a land, it is very important that they show you the drainage there, because the drainage layout will adequately address the issue of flooding if that area is prone to it. The second thing is that avoid places where there are no drainages. There are some places, in fact, I was shocked when I visited some places and I found out that there are no good drainage facilities. And what do you expect to happen in a place where drainage facilities are not there? Avoid them. So you should do that. Then when you are also building, ensure to raise your house above the road level. Now, it is quite unfortunate that a lot of people are building and the level of their house is almost the same thing. Now, the reason why several houses were flooded due to that rainfall was because of the fact that most of those houses were almost at the same level with the road level, which obviously is an error in construction. Raise your building above the road level, and of course, constantly clear your drainage facilities. A lot of people today are pouring refuses, blocking drainage. More important, this is even more common among the market women in Lagos. It was quite unfortunate that I drove past some place in Lekki and I found out that a lot of people were pouring refuse, all these trashes, corn trashes, fruit trashes in the drainage. And today they are wondering why Lekki is flooded. Now, apart from the fact that some places that don't have good drainages, the available drainages are blocked. So you obviously want to work or avoid places where the drainage canal has been turned to a refuse dump. You obviously will, because that is a disaster that is looming and waiting to happen. So pay attention to that. So these are the important things you need to do basically, and most importantly, do your inspection during rainy season. Now, during your inspection during rainy season will also give you, an insight of how the water situation or the flood situation of that area is. Now, when you have done this, you will be able to make an informed decision whether to buy this. Now, for that drainage layout, it is very, see, a lot of lands that is being sold in weatherLekki and Efe don't even have what we call the drainage facility. So what you have seen in Lekki, well, in some places, okay, there are disasters that will happen if they don't have drainage. So this is very, very prominent to both houses and lands. So this is where I'm going to draw today's curtain of property matters on flooding. I hope you have gotten the important information. Talked about signs that shows that a place is prone to flooding. I've also explained the causes of flooding, and I've also explained how you can avoid flooding. So this is where I'm going to go to this curtain. Thank you for following. Now, in case you want to do any form of real estate, or you want us to help you check and of course look out for places that may not be due to flooding, of course you can give us a call, and I'll see you immediately in my next video. Bye for now. God bless you.